Hello, my beautiful Pisces. I'm really happy you're here today. Before we begin, just take a slow, comfortable breath and allow yourself to settle into this moment. This reading may not belong to everyone, and that's perfectly okay. Simply take what resonates with your heart and let the rest drift away. As I begin laying these cards on the table, it already feels like there's a story that has been waiting quietly beneath the surface, almost as if someone's heart has been carrying words they never found the courage to say. The first card that catches my attention is Justice, and it feels as though someone has finally reached a place where they can no longer keep arguing with their own emotions. They've tried to be logical, they've tried to convince themselves that distance was the right decision, or that enough time would eventually quiet everything they were feeling. But instead, life has gently kept bringing your energy back into their mind. It isn't loud, it isn't dramatic, it simply keeps returning, again and again, asking them to be honest with themselves. Then, Three of Swords quietly appears, and I almost pause for a moment. Yeah, this feels heavier than regret alone. It feels like someone realizing that the pain they were trying to escape somehow followed them anyway. Sometimes we believe walking away will protect us from difficult emotions, yet this person may now understand that leaving never truly disconnected their heart from yours. If anything, the silence gave every unanswered question more room to echo. They may be replaying conversations, wondering how different everything might have been if they had spoken just a little more honestly, listened a little longer, or stayed a little closer. What feels especially touching is that I don't sense this reflection coming from pride anymore. It feels softer than that. There seems to be a quiet wish to acknowledge the hurt that may have been left behind. Perhaps they hope that one day they can simply look into your eyes and say, "I'm sorry." Not because they expect everything to become perfect overnight, but because carrying those unspoken emotions has become heavier than admitting the truth. As Wheel of Fortune joins the reading, something begins to shift. I don't feel rushed energy here. Instead, it feels like someone slowly recognizing that meeting you may have changed their life in ways they never fully appreciated before. They may not have understood the connection while they were living inside it. Sometimes our deepest lessons only become visible after we've walked away from them. It almost feels as though every road they've taken has somehow circled back to the memory of you. Okay, and then the Hierophant settles into the spread, so naturally that the atmosphere becomes incredibly calm. I don't feel this card shouting about destiny or making impossible promises. It simply feels like there is a bond that continues to invite growth, compassion, and understanding. Your connection seems to have awakened questions inside this person that they never thought to ask before. They may not even have the perfect words for it yet. They only know that something about you continues to live quietly inside their heart, asking them to become a more honest version of themselves. Pisces, if you've been wondering why your intuition keeps whispering that something is still unfinished, perhaps this reading is simply inviting you to honor what you already feel, without forcing any conclusions. Sometimes healing begins long before two people ever speak again. And as I continue looking at these cards, it feels like the silence is beginning to give way to something that has wanted to be spoken for a very long time. There is something beautifully vulnerable unfolding as I lay down the Ace of Swords. It feels like someone has reached a point where keeping everything inside has become more exhausting than speaking honestly. I almost hear unfinished sentences sitting quietly in their mind, replaying over and over. Not because they are searching for the perfect words, but because they finally understand that silence can sometimes create even more distance than difficult conversations ever could. It seems like they want you to know what was happening inside them when they couldn't explain it before. What surprises me is that this doesn't feel like someone trying to convince you of anything. I don't sense manipulation here. I simply feel a heart that wants the chance to be seen without all the walls it once relied on. They may have imagined meeting you somewhere familiar, maybe sharing a quiet conversation where neither of you feels rushed. Perhaps they have pictured that moment so many times that it almost feels real to them already. They don't seem to be searching for dramatic words anymore. They may simply want to tell you, "This is who I truly am, and this is how I've always felt." As judgment appears beside it, I notice an entirely different kind of energy surrounding this connection. It feels like someone looking back at their own choices without trying to defend them. Yeah, that's interesting. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" they may now be asking, "What have I learned because of it?" Those are two very different questions. I feel as though life has quietly humbled them in ways they never expected. Certain experiences may have softened their perspective, allowing compassion to replace the need to always be right. Pisces, I also feel that your presence may have become a mirror for this person. Not a mirror that judges them, but one that gently reflects the parts of themselves they were not ready to face before. Sometimes love doesn't change us, because another person asks us to change. Sometimes love simply helps us notice who we've always wanted to become. That's the feeling surrounding these cards today. When the Fool comes into view, everything seems to become lighter. Oh my God, there is almost an innocence returning here. It feels like someone who no longer wants to carry yesterday into tomorrow. They may understand that nothing can erase the past, yet they still hope the future doesn't have to be controlled by it. There is a quiet willingness to take emotional risks that once felt impossible. Even if uncertainty remains, they seem more interested in authenticity than perfection. The energy shifts again with Eight of Wands, and I can't ignore how much movement begins flowing through this reading. It may not happen in the exact way anyone expects, and I wouldn't want to force a timeline onto something so personal, but it feels like thoughts that have been gathering for a long time are gradually finding direction. Conversations imagined countless times may slowly become conversations that actually take place. Whether those words arrive through a message, a phone call, or an unexpected meeting, the desire beneath them seems deeply sincere. One feeling continues to stand out above everything else. This person doesn't seem to be chasing an idealized version of the relationship anymore. They appear to be hoping for something much simpler and much more genuine. Even if forgiveness takes time, even if trust grows one small step at a time, it feels like they would rather walk that slower path than spend another season wondering what might have happened if they had been brave enough to open their heart. As these cards continue unfolding, another layer of this journey begins to reveal what they quietly dream about whenever they allow themselves to imagine a future instead of a memory. The energy becomes incredibly gentle as Queen of Pentacles finds her place in the spread. I almost smile, because this doesn't feel like someone dreaming about a perfect fairy tale. It feels much quieter than that. It feels like someone imagining ordinary mornings that somehow become extraordinary simply because you're there. I keep sensing little moments instead of grand gestures. Sharing breakfast before the day begins. Laughing over something completely unimportant. Sitting together after a long day without feeling the need to fill every silence. It seems like they're beginning to understand that real happiness isn't always found in excitement. Sometimes it's found in peace, and somehow they associate that feeling with you, Pisces. There is a warmth surrounding this card that feels deeply comforting. They may have spent a long time chasing things they believed would finally make them feel complete, only to discover that fulfillment isn't something they could earn or achieve. It's something they experienced whenever they allowed themselves to be emotionally present. I feel like your kindness has quietly reshaped their understanding of what love can actually feel like. Not overwhelming, not complicated, just safe. As Ten of Cups appears, the atmosphere grows even softer. Yeah, I keep sensing someone who has started imagining a future they may not have allowed themselves to picture before. Perhaps they've caught themselves wondering what life would feel like if you were still sharing it together, not because they expect everything to unfold perfectly, but because your presence seems to have become part of the picture whenever they think about lasting happiness. They may even surprise themselves by how naturally your face appears whenever they imagine home. Pisces, something tells me this isn't simply about romance anymore. It feels like admiration has slowly grown into respect, and respect has slowly become trust. They may see qualities in you that become more beautiful the longer they reflect on them. Your patience, your compassion, the way you care for people without asking for recognition. Those quiet parts of you seem to have left a much deeper impression than either of you may fully realize. The Knight of Cups carries an energy that almost feels hopeful. Okay, this card doesn't rush across the table today. Instead, it feels thoughtful, as though every step is being taken with greater care than before. I sense someone whose heart has always wanted to move toward you, but whose confidence hasn't always been able to keep pace with those feelings. They may be discovering that vulnerability isn't weakness after all. Perhaps they're learning that expressing genuine affection requires more courage than pretending not to care. Yet Eight of Swords gently reminds me that love and fear can sometimes exist side by side. I don't feel that these fears erase their feelings. If anything, they seem to reveal how much this connection matters to them. There may still be moments when old doubts quietly return, questions about whether they've waited too long, whether they'll find the right words, whether they'll be accepted as they are today rather than who they used to be. Those thoughts may still visit them from time to time, but they no longer seem to be the only voice they're listening to. What feels especially meaningful is that their heart appears to be growing louder than those fears. Little by little, they're allowing hope to speak where anxiety once held all the space. It seems like maturity has changed the way they measure love. Instead of asking whether everything will be easy, they may simply be asking whether someone is worth building a future with. Every card resting here seems to gently turn their attention back toward the same answer, and as the spread continues to open, another quiet layer begins revealing how much this time apart may have transformed them from the inside out. The atmosphere changes again as the Hermit quietly settles onto the table. This doesn't feel lonely to me. It feels intentional. It feels like someone who has stopped looking for distractions, because distractions no longer answer the questions they're carrying inside. There is a peaceful kind of solitude surrounding this card, almost as though they've finally allowed themselves to sit with their own thoughts instead of running from them. I keep sensing long evenings filled with reflection, moments where they suddenly recognize patterns they never noticed before. Sometimes growth happens in crowded places, but sometimes it only happens when everything becomes still enough for the truth to be heard. Pisces, I feel like this person has been meeting versions of themselves they didn't fully understand before. They've begun noticing how old fears quietly influence their choices. Perhaps experiences from years ago shaped the way they protected their heart, without even realizing it. Instead of blaming someone else for those reactions, they seem more willing to ask themselves difficult questions. Yeah, that feels important. There's a difference between feeling guilty and becoming self-aware, and what I'm sensing here leans much more toward awareness than self-punishment. As Seven of Pentacles appears, I can't help but notice how patient this energy feels. It seems like they've stopped expecting overnight change. They're beginning to understand that becoming a healthier person is something built one small decision at a time. Maybe they've started taking better care of themselves emotionally. Perhaps they're paying more attention to the way they communicate, the way they respond under pressure, or the way they withdraw when emotions become overwhelming. Whatever this personal work looks like, it doesn't feel performative. It feels deeply personal, almost invisible to everyone except themselves. I also sense something quietly beautiful happening beneath the surface. They may be asking themselves what kind of partner they truly want to become, rather than simply wondering who they want to be with. That's such a different perspective. Instead of focusing on receiving love, they're beginning to think about how they can offer it more consistently, more gently, and with greater emotional presence. It feels like they're planting seeds today that they hope will eventually grow into something lasting. When Four of Cups comes forward, I notice a little sadness mixed into the reading. Oh, this feels like someone realizing they overlooked precious moments while they were too distracted by everything else happening around them. There may be memories returning unexpectedly. Small conversations, tiny acts of kindness, quiet moments that didn't seem significant at the time, but now carry enormous emotional weight. Sometimes we only recognize the value of tenderness after life has shown us how rare it truly is. One thought keeps repeating itself as I look at these cards. It almost sounds like, I wish I had loved them the way they deserved while I had the chance. I don't hear this as harsh self-criticism. It feels more like someone discovering a deeper understanding of love itself. They may realize that genuine affection isn't only expressed through words or big promises. It's reflected in consistency, presence, listening, patience, and showing up with an open heart. The feeling becomes noticeably warmer as Six of Pentacles completes this part of the spread. Balance seems to matter far more to them than it once did. I sense a quiet desire to create something where both people feel equally valued, equally heard, and equally cared for. They're no longer measuring love by who gives more or who sacrifices more. Instead, they seem to be dreaming about a relationship where kindness flows naturally in both directions, without anyone having to question whether they're enough. There is something remarkably peaceful about this transformation, because it doesn't appear to be driven by fear anymore. It feels inspired by hope. And as these cards continue revealing themselves, another layer begins to emerge that speaks less about what they've lost and much more about what they can no longer ignore within their own heart. Something feels especially quiet as Nine of Swords reveals itself. Not heavy in a hopeless way, but quiet in the way the world feels just before sunrise, when someone has been awake for hours with thoughts they can't seem to silence. I don't feel like this person is afraid of you. I feel like they're sitting with the weight of who they used to be. There may be nights when memories arrive unexpectedly, not to punish them, but to remind them of the moments they wish they had handled differently. It's almost as if their own heart has become the conversation they avoided for so long. Pisces, I keep sensing that regret isn't coming from the fact that love disappeared. It feels like it's coming from the realization that love was always there, yet they didn't always know how to express it. Sometimes people believe they'll have another day, another opportunity, another conversation. Life has a gentle way of teaching us that timing matters, and this person may have learned that lesson more deeply than they ever imagined. As Five of Cups settles beside it, I notice tears that were never shown to anyone else. Yeah, this feels incredibly private. They may carry a version of this story that no one around them fully understands. Outwardly, they could appear composed, focused, even optimistic. Yet underneath, there seems to be an honest acknowledgement that they didn't fully appreciate what they had while it was close enough to hold. I almost hear them whispering to themselves, I wish I had loved more openly. I wish I had trusted what my heart already knew. The beautiful thing is that this realization doesn't feel trapped in sadness forever. The world enters the reading with a completely different atmosphere. It feels like someone standing at the edge of a new chapter after walking through a season that changed them from the inside out. I don't sense perfection here. I sense perspective. Experiences that once felt like endings may now look more like turning points. They seem to understand that growth isn't measured by never making mistakes. It's measured by what those mistakes awaken within you. There is something surprisingly humble about this energy. They may no longer be trying to protect an image of themselves or prove that they had all the answers. Instead, they seem more interested in becoming someone whose actions reflect what their heart truly values. That's a very different kind of strength. It isn't loud, it isn't dramatic, it quietly shows up in everyday choices, in patience, in honesty, and in the willingness to admit when something should have been done differently. When death completes this part of the spread, I don't feel fear at all. Oh, I actually feel relief. It seems like an old version of this person has been slowly falling away, piece by piece. The habits that once kept them emotionally distant no longer fit the person they're becoming. The need to always appear unaffected, always in control, or always certain seems to be losing its hold. What remains feels much more authentic. Pisces, I keep sensing one thought repeating itself beneath all these cards. If life were to place another opportunity in front of them, they wouldn't want to repeat the same story. Not because they're chasing perfection, but because they finally recognize that someone with a heart like yours deserved more tenderness than they knew how to offer at the time. Whether that opportunity ever arrives is something only time can reveal, yet the intention itself feels sincere. There is also a quiet determination here. They don't seem interested in asking you to believe that they've changed simply because they say so. Instead, it feels like they hope that, If your paths ever cross again, the person standing before you will naturally reveal the growth that words alone could never fully explain. As I continue laying these cards across the table, another gentle truth begins to emerge, and it carries the comforting feeling of a place where their heart has never truly stopped trying to find its way home. The feeling becomes incredibly comforting as Ten of Pentacles appears across the table. This card doesn't draw my attention toward grand celebrations or extravagant dreams. Instead, it keeps pulling me toward something beautifully ordinary. I see warmth. I see familiarity. I see the kind of peace that settles into someone's heart when they finally stop searching because they've found the place where they can simply be themselves. It feels like this person has begun realizing that what they've longed for wasn't excitement alone. It was stability. It was trust. And somehow, Pisces, your energy continues to represent that quiet sense of home. There is something almost sacred about the way they're remembering you. It doesn't feel like they're holding on to an idealized fantasy. Rather, it seems they're recalling the emotional safety they experienced whenever your kindness was present. I keep sensing little moments that stayed with them much longer than they expected. A thoughtful conversation, a reassuring smile, the way you may have listened without rushing to judge. Those memories appear to have become gentle reminders of the kind of love they hope to create one day. When Queen of Cups comes forward, I almost pause because the energy softens even more. Yeah, this feels deeply heartfelt. They seem to admire something about you that goes far beyond appearance or chemistry. It feels like they've come to appreciate your compassion, your patience, and the quiet strength hidden beneath your gentle nature. Perhaps they didn't fully recognize those qualities before, but distance has a way of bringing certain truths into focus. It seems like they've begun to understand that your ability to care for others was never weakness. It was one of the most beautiful things about you. Pisces, I also sense that this person may have felt accepted by you in ways they hadn't experienced very often. Even during moments when they struggled to understand themselves, your presence may have offered a feeling of calm that was difficult to explain. That memory seems to have stayed with them. It almost feels like whenever life becomes overwhelming, a part of their heart quietly remembers what it felt like to be seen, without needing to pretend. A gentle spark enters the reading with Page of Wands, and I can't help but smile. Oh, this energy feels hopeful again. There is curiosity here, almost like someone beginning to believe that a different future might actually be possible. They're not only thinking about what they lost, they seem to be wondering what could still be created if two people met each other with greater honesty, greater maturity, and far more openness than before. It feels like they're becoming excited by the possibility of building something real instead of chasing something temporary. Their heart doesn't appear interested in fleeting emotions anymore. I feel a growing desire for consistency, for showing up, for making someone feel emotionally secure instead of uncertain. Those thoughts seem to have become much more important than proving themselves right or protecting their pride. As Six of Cups gently completes this part of the reading, everything becomes wrapped in a quiet sense of affection. There is such tenderness here that it almost feels timeless. The connection continues to live inside them in ways they may not always speak about openly. Certain songs, familiar places, little details throughout the day may still remind them of you without warning. Not in a way that keeps them trapped in the past, but in a way that reminds them what genuine emotional closeness once felt like. One feeling rises above everything else. If someone were to ask this person what kind of love they truly hope to build in the future, it seems they would describe something that looks remarkably similar to the peace they associate with you. Whether life brings your paths together again, or simply allows both hearts to carry these lessons forward, your presence appears to have become part of the foundation upon which they now understand love itself. As I continue turning over the remaining cards, the energy begins opening towards something even more vulnerable, as though a heart that stayed hidden for so long is finally ready to speak in its own voice. The moment Ace of Cups appears, I can almost feel the entire atmosphere becoming lighter. This doesn't feel like a heart that's trying to hide anymore. It feels like someone who has quietly reached the point where pretending has become far more exhausting than simply telling the truth. There is a softness surrounding this card that almost takes my breath away. I don't sense pressure or urgency. I sense sincerity. It feels like they want to stand in front of you exactly as they are, without carefully rehearsed words or emotional masks, and simply let their heart speak for itself. Pisces, I keep feeling that this person has discovered something important during all the time they've spent reflecting. Love doesn't become smaller when it's ignored. If anything, it often grows louder in the quiet places where no one else can hear it. They may have tried convincing themselves that these feelings would eventually disappear, yet every attempt to move away seems to have led them back to the same realization. Your presence continues to occupy a space inside their heart that nothing else has quite been able to replace. When the lover settles beside the Ace of Cups, there is an undeniable sense of emotional openness. Yeah, this card feels less like a dramatic romance and more like two souls learning how to meet each other honestly. I don't feel that they're searching for perfection anymore. They seem to be hoping for authenticity. They may have realized that the strongest connections aren't built because two people never make mistakes. They're built because both people are willing to remain present when vulnerability asks to be seen. I almost hear them imagining a conversation where neither of you needs to defend the past. Instead, they simply want to share everything they never found the courage to express before. The gratitude they never voiced, the admiration they kept hidden, the moments they cherished without ever saying so aloud. It feels like there are entire chapters of emotion that have remained unwritten, waiting patiently for the day they finally become words. As King of Cups comes into the reading, I notice something remarkably steady. Oh, this energy feels mature. The emotional waves that once may have frightened them no longer seem impossible to navigate. They're learning that strength isn't about suppressing feelings, it's about carrying them with honesty and care. There is a quiet confidence beginning to emerge, not because they believe they'll always know exactly what to say, but because they're no longer afraid of letting their heart be visible. It also feels like they want their actions to reflect what they've learned. They may understand that saying, "I care about you" is meaningful, but living in a way that consistently shows that care carries even greater significance. The person these cards describe seems much more interested in creating trust than making promises they cannot keep. That feels incredibly genuine to me. When Ace of Swords completes the spread, clarity seems to fill every corner of this reading. I keep sensing someone who has grown tired of half-truths, mixed signals, and conversations left unfinished. They may simply want to tell you what has been real all along, not because they're expecting a particular response, but because honesty itself has become part of their healing. Pisces, one feeling continues to rise above every other message here. This connection appears to have become deeper with time, rather than fading beneath it. Sometimes distance reveals what closeness could not. Sometimes silence teaches us the value of words we never spoke. Whatever path this journey ultimately follows, it seems this person no longer wants fear to be the author of their story. They would rather let sincerity lead, even if the outcome remains beautifully uncertain. As I reach for the final cards waiting beside the spread, one last chapter begins revealing itself, carrying the quiet feeling of someone who has finally become ready to love, with both an open heart and a steadier soul. King of Pentacles arrives, with an energy that feels remarkably grounded. There is something different about this person now. I don't feel someone chasing excitement just for the sake of feeling alive. I feel someone who has slowly discovered the quiet strength of consistency. Life seems to have taught them lessons that no conversation ever could. Every disappointment, every unanswered question, every season of uncertainty appears to have shaped them into someone who values stability far more than they once did. It feels like they're asking themselves not, "How do I win someone's heart?" but rather, "How do I become someone worthy of protecting it?" Pisces, I keep sensing that they want to offer something lasting instead of something temporary. They may no longer be interested in proving themselves through grand gestures or perfect words. Instead, they seem drawn toward the kind of love that quietly shows up every day. The kind that listens, the kind that stays, the kind that creates safety instead of confusion. It almost feels as though they've realized that real commitment isn't built in one extraordinary moment. It's built through countless ordinary moments shared with care. As the sun lights up the reading, everything feels brighter without becoming overwhelming. Yeah, this is such a peaceful energy. I sense someone beginning to forgive themselves for the person they used to be, while still honoring everything those experiences taught them. There is laughter returning to their spirit, hope returning to places that once felt empty. They may even find themselves smiling unexpectedly when they think about you, not because the past no longer matters, but because they're beginning to believe the future doesn't have to be defined by it. What touches me most is that your energy seems to inspire the very best parts of who they are. They don't appear to want to become someone different just to impress you. It feels more like meeting you awakened qualities that had been quietly waiting inside them all along. Your connection may have reminded them that kindness can be strength, vulnerability can be courage, and genuine love doesn't require anyone to hide who they truly are. When Three of Pentacles settles into the spread, I immediately sense partnership. Oh, this doesn't feel like one person carrying everything alone. It feels like two people learning how to build something together, step by step. I don't see perfection here, and honestly, I think that's what makes this energy so beautiful. They seem willing to grow alongside someone, rather than expecting everything to already be complete. There is humility in that. There is patience. They may understand that lasting relationships aren't created because two people never struggle. They're created because both people choose to keep showing up with honesty, respect, and willingness to learn from each other. The atmosphere becomes almost magical as the star appears as the final card. I always find myself slowing down when this energy arrives because it carries such quiet reassurance. Not certainty, just hope. It feels like someone who has stopped letting fear make every important decision. They may still have questions, they may still wonder what tomorrow will bring, yet those doubts no longer seem strong enough to keep love locked away behind closed doors. Pisces, if there is one message flowing through this entire reading, it is this gentle reminder that people sometimes grow in ways no one could have predicted, especially after life asks them to look inward with honesty. Whether this connection continues through shared conversations, unexpected reunions, or simply through the lessons both hearts carry forward, it seems to have awakened something meaningful in everyone involved. Perhaps the greatest gift isn't found in trying to control where the story goes from here, but in allowing each new chapter to unfold with openness, compassion, and the quiet belief that love often finds its deepest expression when two hearts have learned how to meet each other with greater wisdom than before. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, Pisces. Your presence truly means a lot to me, and I hope this reading offered you a little comfort, a little clarity, or simply a peaceful moment to reflect. Take gentle care of yourself. Keep listening to your beautiful intuition, and I'll be so happy to see you again in the next reading. Until then, goodbye, my beautiful Pisces.